Right?
Yes, they are.
Oh, they are.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Thank you all for being patient. This is the sort of start of our fiscal year, so to speak. We're going to move to the reorganization portion of the meeting for the board. We choose the board officers, and we approve a long list as a consent agenda in one go. We approve a long list of resources and other parties that we work with as a board and as a district. So Melissa's going to start with the administration of the, I'm sorry. Oh, you did that already. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we've already administered the oaths to our new board members so that they could take part in the executive session. So that was already done prior to the to this meeting. So we're going to start with the nomination of the new board president.
So is there a motion? Is it a motion?
Well,
Is there a motion to nominate?
Does
For the board
anybody have a
president.
nomination, right? Nominate someone and then we do a motion.
Oh, you're right.
So I'd like to nominate Alex to be the new board president.
Thank you.
I'd like to nominate Alex too, and you're fantastic, and thank you so much again for all of the work you did the last 12 months and prior.
Thank you. Thank
Okay, I second that.
you. Thank you.
Okay, so we're.
Is Catherine here? Yeah.
She's
Yeah,
on
okay.
there.
Hi, yep.
So everybody's, there's no other nomination, so then we could take a motion, right, to approve Alex?
Unless you nominate somebody else, Catherine.
Okay, so is there a motion to nominate Alex as the board president?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, so Alex, we're going to do your swearing in.
I, Alex Tapias, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of Board President, Hastings-on-Hudson Union Free School District, the Town of Greenburgh, Westchester County, New York, according to the best of my ability.
Okay, just sign here. Do we have a nomination for the vice president?
I would like to nominate Jody Meyer to serve as Vice President.
Any other nominations?
I would like to nominate, can I nominate two people?
Sure.
I would like to nominate Jody Meyer and Maureen Santana for the role of Vice President. And the two of you can duke it out?
I didn't want to duke it out with her.
Technical term.
Yes.
I support your nomination, Jody.
Thank you. I think Alex and I, as everyone knows, or Alex and Maureen, would agree to do this until we move into September, I guess, and then we'll think about where we are with board president, vice president, and how we move forward. I'm totally fine with you doing it. But I don't know, how do we do this?
So you accept the nomination?
I do.
Okay.
Do you?
No, we have to pick only one.
Oh. Oh, I'm sorry.
Is there a motion to approve Jody Meyer's nomination as vice president?
So moved.
So moved. I mean,
Second.
I'm going to go hide under the table right now.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, so this is for Jody.
It's okay, Melissa?
Yeah.
I, Jody Meyer, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of Board Vice President, Hastings-on-Hudson Union Free School District of the Town of Greenburgh, Westchester County, New York, according to the best of my ability. Just don't tell my kids.
Keep it a secret.
Now it's you.
Next, we're going to have a resolution to appoint our district clerk. It's not a nomination, is it? Is it?
No, she just takes the oath.
Okay. So can I administer the oath to you? So, for you.
I, Melissa Delabarrera, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of District Clerk, Hastings-on-Hudson Union Free School District of the Town of Greenburgh, Westchester County, New York, according to the best of my ability.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. You have what you need from us, right?
Wait, did you need a motion for that? I'm sorry, Melissa, yeah, just take the motion on it. Take
Okay. Is there a motion to approve Melissa De La Barrera as our district clerk?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Moving on to a consent agenda. These are all posted online. Is there a motion? These are items 2 through 50. Yeah. Is there a motion to approve our consent agenda?
In the box. I'm sorry, Alex, could-
Sure.
when you say 2 through 50 in board docs, where would that be?
So if you look under B where it says consent agenda, it has a list of roles that we're approving. Claims adjuster, claims auditor, purchasing agent, certifier of payrolls, right,
Oh.
all those, that whole list.
Okay.
You're in the,
Okay.
there are the two links. You're in the org meeting because they're two.
Well, there are two links. They're two separate agendas.
Oh, okay.
See.
That might be what it is.
No, we're in the org meeting.
Okay. Oh, I see. Thank you. I see, thank you.
Is there a motion to approve our consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. And now we're switching, this is the other link on board docs.
To adjourn.
Oh, I'm sorry, sorry. Is there a motion to adjourn out of the reorganizational meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Now we switch over to the other link. So I'm going to call to order a regular meeting of the Hastings-on-Hudson Board of Education for July 14th, 2025. We're going to begin this afternoon with our vote for our interim assistant principal appointment. I'm sorry? Okay, sure.
Just making all the links live.
Oh, okay, thanks.
What are we doing?
We're good?
Yes, sorry.
Okay. So, as I mentioned, we're going to start with a vote on the FMS interim assistant principal appointment. Ms. Lauren Iorio, right? I said it correctly? We had the opportunity to meet with her this morning for 45 minutes. She had gone through an entire full process within the district over the past 6 to 8 weeks, and was the candidate that was put forth at the end. And we were impressed by her background in the parochial school in St. Barnabas, her experience there, how boots on the ground it was, how real it was, how impactful it was, and the energy that she brought to the role. If anybody wants to say any other impressions that they had of her from the meeting, feel free.
I agree with what Alex said. You appear as a doer. That's what we need at our middle school, a passionate person who creates impactful experiences for the students and the families. And it is evident that that's something you're very committed to.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I would second that. I mean, I didn't mention it in the meeting, but my impression is that you are somebody who genuinely likes and values kids, but even beyond that, that is something that a child themselves will take away very easily from their interactions with you, which is at a whole other level. So I'm very welcoming of that ingredient. So happy to support.
Anything else before I want to say something? Go ahead.
Don't go.
Jody, you go.
I was going to move right here.
So Dan Waldeck is, I don't think he'd mind me saying, he's on a very important vacation in Greece with his in-laws-to-be. Some of you may know he's engaged, so he's there with his fiance's family who are Greek. And Dan was incredibly apologetic, maybe 10 times to me, about being away right now. I said, Dan, as great as Hastings is and as dedicated you are to Hastings, family comes first, so don't get your fiance too upset. So even saying that, he's been on the emails with us, texting, and I just got a clue that he's even been texting Lauren, you today. Well, let me say a couple things here. Dan did not need to run a process. For an interim, he could have come to me and said, you know, here's what we want to do. But he didn't. He came and said, it's really important we run a process. I need to have multiple voices in the recommendation I bring to you, Bill. And he ran a full process, very tight, but a full process. So it included an advisory committee with the standard type of membership, staff, administrators, parents, and so very significant that way. He then had a pool of some 40 or 50 candidates. Before that, he had vetted them with other help down to about 17, and including Melissa Szymanski and others. They did screenings of those 17 to come down to the group that was actually interviewed, and it may have even been a larger number at that point to be interviewed in person. Then several top candidates emerged. It was a horse race amongst all three, with Lauren very much in the lead, and they each met with the cabinet, including myself, because quite intentionally I stayed out of it to the very end because it's my job to bring the recommended candidate to the board. And so what I came away with in the first meeting with Lauren, excuse the first names, even though you'll be Ms. Iorio. We got a Diorio around here, and Iorio with the students is you're a content expert, math, and having taught math at a very prestigious, challenging school, Ursuline. You then shifted into the Bronx to become an assistant principal at a parochial K through 8 school, but with a middle school background. That's where you'd been, serving any and all children who would come to that school. And as you yourself said several years ago, as wonderful as St. Barnabas is now, it was a struggling school. And you as the sole administrator for 500 students, let me repeat that, sole administrator for 500 students, did such things as establish a PTA, did such things as making sure you're there for the ENL students, did such things as making sure you're there for the special ed students, because you actually have that background and expertise, did such things as making sure that there were activities which didn't really exist, but as students came forward and said, I want some reason to have an activity and be at school, you established and created that. At one point, in establishing a volleyball team, which now has a lot of members, separate from that, the bus needed driving, so you drove the bus. So what that energy and spirit, and hear me talking with content all the way through social emotional, through the well-being of middle schoolers, that's what through this whole process, 4 or 5 meetings with you by committees, individuals, and all the rest that Dan organized and led, that expertise and energy was seen at each step of the way. And now you know it's an interim. You're coming in to pair with Dan an interim. And as you've said to us, your commitment is not to think as an interim, but think as the assistant principal, because that's what Hastings children, and especially the middle school, need. Now, you've told us you'll be omnipresent, omnivisible, out front, saying hello, being very visible, and I look forward to that. So, Board, I recommend strongly, and if Dan were here, he'd be making these remarks, but I'm doing that for him to go full circle, because if we, as workers here, don't take care of our families, we're not very good workers. So,
Yeah, can I just add another extra layer onto what Bill has already mentioned? You know, one of the things you said that impressed me the most, you know, St. Barnabas is a school, because of the family realities in that part of the Bronx, that building opens at 7 in the morning, and it's programmatically busy until at least 6, if not later. You're a part of all of that. And one of the things you said was, when you got in there, you felt it was really your job to design a school that kids wanted to be at, because they had to be there, a lot of them, for a lot longer than a typical school day. And that was very impactful. And so, joining Dr. McCursey on behalf of the board, I would like to nominate Lauren Iorio as the as the interim assistant principal for FMS Middle School. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to a resolution to appoint the supervisor of attendance for Farragut Middle School. Do we know who that is? Or?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So,
Lauren Iorio.
so it started already.
We couldn't appoint her to that until she was appointed as the assistant principal.
I thought that might be logically right, but just to be sure. So, is there a motion to approve Lauren Iorio as the supervisor of attendance for the Farragut Middle School?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. And a resolution to appoint the School Dignity Act coordinator for the Farragut Middle School. That would be Lauren Iorio again. Is there a motion to approve her in that role?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Thank you again.
If I may add something there, because this area, both attendance but also the Dignity Act, are a high priority here in Hastings, especially the Dignity Act. And one of the things I've liked about Dan Waldick and his approach to the Dignity Act is called the Dignity Act, because that underscores why it's so important. And even coming out of the Catholic school world, and some of them may not know, I used to work in that world, assistant superintendent up in the Archdiocese of Boston 14, 15 years ago. So I have some background. But it was really important to us to talk with Ms. Iorio about her experiences with that. So while not required per se, with her certification, she knows that law, the requirements very well. But here's what matters most to me. It's the content and the essence of that law that clearly Lauren knows very, very well from her work and is committed to. Because when we get the essence and the core of the Dignity Act right, we can do much better on living up to what the legal requirements are. I just wanted to underscore that we've paid close attention to that aspect of the transition for Ms. Iorio into our school system.
Thank you. Thank you. We're also going to hear from Dr. McCursey. While we've been away for a couple of weeks, the two impactful rulings have come down, one federally and one from the state. Federally, we have the Supreme Court ruling, Mahmoud versus Taylor, which is going to update us on how it would impact the district. And then from New York State itself, I think that everyone's aware that New York State moved to limit screen-enabled devices during the school day. We had an initial plan that we were going to work on an honor system, expecting children to have the devices sequestered and put away. That was very similar to a lot of districts around us, but in the 2 weeks since we left school, New York State has clarified their own law and said that no type of sequestering, whether in a locker or in a backpack, would be sufficient to fulfill the obligation under the law. So Dr. McCursey is going to update us on what we're going to be doing about that as well. So.
Thanks, Alex. The first on the U.S. Supreme Court ruling, obviously quite a significant ruling. It will have an impact here in Hastings. At this point, I'll be very, very brief and commit to the board and through the board to the community that at the August 26th board meeting, we will be back with the recommended policy and procedure as to how we will, in this district, approach it. The administration's already begun digging into this. We obviously have to do this very carefully and closely with legal counsel as to how we'll approach this. But when we come back to you on August 26th with recommended policy and procedures, it'll relate to what the law does say about opt-out options for families as it relates to various course content. But we will come back again, as I've said, with the policy and procedures for that opt-out approach. The law is very clear that we'll be required to have an opt-out approach, but we want to sort of make sure we come back with some details and specifics at this point. So the administration, with legal guidance, will be working on that the next several weeks, because that's really all there is between now and August 26th. But we'll be back with specifics then, and make it with a communication plan too for families as to what this means. The questions right now, or if that's clear enough?
That's fine, yeah. Just on,
Go ahead.
No, you have a question.
I understand the legal requirement now around opting out of certain course content. Does the district intend in any way to change course content based on this?
Well, I've actually been quite adamant, no. Respecting this ruling with legal guidance and my own reading, but very important legal guidance. This is a ruling about parent choice. This is a ruling about giving families and parents choice, which has ramifications beyond the particular topic of that ruling, which is why we have to understand it a little better. But this is not about changing content. The court was silent on that. In my own modest view, it should have been silent, and I've actually been quite adamant already with our team not to have slippage into any sort of content area, as opposed to how do we structure this so families have their full right to parent choice around what their children are learning and seeing. And that's what we're trying to understand. I hope that was clear enough.
Yes.
Because I think, and I hope the board agrees with me, this is not now a time to go dig into content change, as opposed to respect the right of parents and families to make choices.
You okay with that?
Has your feedback from administrators been sort of frustration as to how the logistics of this are going to work?
Melissa Szymanski might be able to speak to that. She's been working most directly with Andy and Amy. Dan, again, respecting his being in Greece, he'll be deep in the conversation. And now, certainly Lauren, Tara, and Mike, assistant principals, will be in it. I don't think it's frustration as opposed to their commitment to do this right once school opens. Now, some of the courses in question aren't till the spring, so we have a little bit of time. But by August 26, I really want, for the sake of the students and families and staff, have clarity on how we're approaching this. So I don't think it's frustration, at least trying to understand it. But again, though, I had insisted with the administrators, do not let us slip at all into a content question here. We are not going there.
Yeah, so in working directly with everyone, definitely not frustration. I wouldn't use that. But I would say questions, because we want to make sure that whenever there's any kind of policy guidance where we have to comply, we want to make sure it's actionable. So we're really working hand in hand with legal to understand, help guide us through this, because our program is our program, our curriculum is our curriculum. And so now if this ruling has this opt-out option, we want to make sure that we are able to obviously comply with the law, implement it with fidelity, but it's mostly sorting through some logistics around individuals, like what that actually looks like at the classroom level. So we're confident that council will guide us through that. And we intend to continue full speed ahead with our Hastings work and our beliefs and our values, and making sure all students are represented and see themselves and their world.
thank you. Thank you. Any other
Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Teresa. Moving on to our presentations for this meeting.
I got one more.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're going to do the phone policy?
Yeah, so this item is posted and up now. It should be visible to the public, and there's a lot more detail here. And this one is going to have the immediate effect. But we now, as Alex had introduced, been sorting through relative to the internet-linked or enabled devices storage options, or what the governor is now calling distraction-free schools initiative, that we had to come up with a storage system. The board feedback earlier was very, very helpful. We had initially been going down the idea of a path of an honor system of lockers and backpacks. The board thought that wasn't probably the best idea. Members of the parent leadership group, PTSA and SEPTA in particular, who I spent a lot of time with, they also didn't think it was the best idea. So fortunately, we were in search of pouch options, and actually became very fortunate last week when many districts who were planning to do the locker and backpack option. Learned from the governor that that would not be allowed. Lockers, yes, but backpacks, no. So about mid last week, and luckily the superintendents are all connected, no pun intended, there was this massive scurry for which pouch where, how to get it. One thing I've say in the memo I want to raise up is it came clear to me in my work with the fellow superintendents that we have 3 administrators, they don't. Dan has done this already for about several years. Not 7, several years. Tara has done this in her previous stop. Before Andy left his Bronx high school, he signed off on this plan. So they are quite, 3 of them, expert. Most other districts don't have that. So as we got into the pouch scurry, I could at least immediately turn to our building leaders. I haven't probed with Lauren kind of where they are, but we're lucky to have this expertise. We also have learned that the governor, the plan is that roughly $10 per student will be granted. That's from 5th grade up through 12th grade, the equivalent of our middle school and high school. $10 per student will be granted to us. It looks like a one-time grant, and that will then cover a pouch option we've come upon. That's actually in coordination with Tarrytown. Ray Sanchez, superintendent there, their business official and team have been very helpful. So you'll be voting later in the business meeting to authorize us to obtain those pouches. The memo lays out the plan there. Thanks to Andy and Dan, particularly Dan, though, we have a set of procedures here that may need some slight modification, only really one place, which is what's the access to devices when students are on school business, if you will, field trips and the rest away from this. I think there was a slight variation between what's here and what we decided, but we're quite close on the procedures. So you as a board adopted the policy. You had to do that by August 1. So you've done that, and now if there's nothing to vote on, but if you just are affirming on the procedures, because the policy charges the superintendent with establishing the procedures, not to come back for vote, but to give you awareness of them. If you're comfortable today with the procedures, we'll be ready to submit to the state on time, and that will allow us to then receive the grant money. Final comment on the pouch option. We had been looking, I'm going to keep names out of this, we had been looking at a more expensive, very well-known option that was 3 times the cost of the option we've come upon. That other option did provide more administrative support around planning, communications, all the rest. And to go almost full circle, we're willing to lean on the talents and smarts of Andy, Dan, Tara, who've lived this, and my helping them with what we can put together by way of communications, et cetera. But with this approach, we can get into this coming year with a really new situation for us, financially do that with fully state funding, which will be very helpful. So I've kind of given the highlights of this memo. If I'd urge everyone to read it. It has a lot of detail here, and also lays out what the next steps are.
Yeah, and I would just point out that what Dr. Mercer already raised, when we met in our initial meeting with the principals and APs to look at, discuss device storage, and the options, particularly Dan, I think he had 3 years experience. He'd gone through the entire process, not just of implementing it, but the administrative side and the punitive side. What were the things that had to get handled by the code of conduct, what issues cropped up. So it was I agree with you, there's a lot of experience there across the administrators. It's going to make it much easier, I think, to implement whatever procedures we finalize before the school year begins. So I think the community should have confidence that it's going to be robust and well done. So.
And final comment, in the memo I make a point of thanking PTSA, SEPTA, and HEF, because they were thinking about philanthropic potential here until it became clear what the state would provide, until it became clear that we had a cost-effective option. But I used to spend time in foundations, so I used to think anyway, my brain was more helpful to them than the dollars. I don't know if that was true, but truly, for PTA, SEPTA, and HEF, their brains were very helpful to us. Regardless of the dollars, they were really being good, critical friends on behalf of the students and families and staff. So I want to thank them for their work ongoing on this.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. McCarthy.
Good, very good news, especially about the funding, right?
Yeah, it's rare.
And so just one thing, if there could be sort of some way to to double check in the implementation that, there are no workarounds. I've heard that the kids are very resourceful in terms of putting dummy phones in these pouches. So, kind of in the beginning, I think some of the oversight and enforcement, maybe random checks and stuff like that, could really set a good tone.
Yeah, and I agree. That's the stuff that Dan and Tara that's what we were talking about, all the workarounds, and they were discussing what they had done, punitively or restoratively as well to kind of. So they had some real good experience. Yeah.
I mean, it's a great point. I mean, Dan's feeling from Wagner, which is 1,600 middle schoolers, is it took about a month to kind of get up to warp speed, so to speak, and then it was a few outliers, even in that very big, far more diverse school than we have here, that they really got, up to, as I'll say, warp speed. Interestingly, in the coordination amongst the supers, in the scurry, there is a district, I'm not going to name names, there's a district a little ways from us that's going to have a non-locking pouch, because the word was that students know how to get those unlocked, so why bother having a lock? The feeling of Dan and Andy and others who've lived this is, no, put the lock on, keep the lock on, we have a way to get it unlocked. It's just one more layer going to chances to sort of not play with this, because the heart of this is right. And some are chuckling about what the governor's now called this, but that's what it's about. Let's have schools that are focused on learning, and we take away a big distraction from them. So we'll work hard on that. But again, we'll be reporting back to you. We're obligated next fall to report to the state how it's working. Ahead of that, we'll be sharing. We'll have some interesting moments, so to speak, but assuming the state money comes through, assuming we can nail these pouches, and international trade doesn't get in the way, we'll be going forward.
Just a quick question. I know you had mentioned the pouches cost about $10, $11 per pouch.
Yeah, specifically $8.75.
Okay. I know that in the policy, the replacement cost was $25. Was there a specific reason for just the discrepancy between the two?
That's a very good read. That has to get fixed.
Okay.
That's going back to the other source.
I didn't ask that question.
No, you did ask it. That's why, boy,
good.
you're going to help us fine-tune our game.
My apologies.
No, it's good. Now I got to remember to fix that, though.
Yeah, we'll have this. This will be back up again in the August meeting, obviously, for sure. So, be back on it. Thank you, Dr. McCursey. Moving on to our presentations today. The first one's going to be with Dr. Szymanski. As trustees know, kind of had a confluence of two events that came together this year. Number one was the tri-state visit, which was focused on cultural competency, and the second was the outside auditor, Jerry Baker, whose topic of examination this year was both DEI policies and E&L as well together. And so those topics and the results kind of flow together, and Dr. Szymanski is going to present on those presentations, and also as well as her liaisoning with the Inclusion Working Group as well. So,
Sure, I'm happy
take it away.
to. I'm just trying to figure out the best place to position myself. I think I'll use this mic and toggle.
Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So not to reiterate, so we did have three sources that we've been able to triangulate, and we received very helpful feedback from each of these organizations. And it goes without saying that we are committed to our continual improvement efforts, specifically in the area of cultural competence. And we received probably overall, if you go right down to it, probably about 45 discrete recommendations across the three. So realistically, we want to make sure that we're creating themes and we're identifying some high priority areas so that we can decide where to go in terms of next steps, because putting efforts into 45 different things simultaneously will not be the biggest bang for the buck, but we want to get to what is the 80% that will, what is the 20% that will give us 80% of the lift, so to speak. All right, so I will scroll. This is in the public record. But the key recommendations and themes were in several areas. So we'll begin with recommendations that were related to administrative structure and leadership. And they have provided recommendations in professional learning and curriculum development. Another theme came through around support for English language learners and E&L students. Another was around data, feedback, and communications mechanisms. And then finally, inclusive practices and school culture. So those are really the main buckets. So we'll start here with administrative structure and leadership. So this is not unfamiliar. Over the years, there's been conversation around the D&I, Diversity and Inclusion Coordinator role. So we did see from a couple of different sources, there was a recommendation in the possibility of shifting the role to an administrator, an administrative level position. And the reason being was around authority and having a little bit more just definition around just the roles and responsibilities of an administrator versus someone who is well steeped in the professional learning aspect and is in there for collegial support and a teacher leader support. So that's an area that we will investigate as a possibility. The second was around clear roles and responsibilities, and that's around strategic and tactical planning, focused efforts, shared visioning work, consolidating equity efforts. And so one of the things that was interesting was Tri-State suggested that we consider the messaging that we're sending by having lots of different groups doing different things that are related to equity work rather than one singular unified organization with diverse perspectives that's zeroing in on the work that needs to get done. So that was something to be considered as well. The next area is around professional learning and curriculum development. So all three sources emphasize the need for robust professional development. And that was around frequency, it was around having it be more mandatory. So certain things have happened within our inquiry cycle work, certain things have been happening with teachers taking in-service courses, certain things have been happening with Janice working with different grade levels or different teams. But one of the considerations that has come up through the various audits is to what extent does some of this need to just be universal and mandated? So for example, when we brought in the culturally responsive sustaining education framework, we had training. Dr. Deetra Price-Dennis was working with the department chairs. That was something that was embedded, and it was all of us participating in that work at the department chair level, with the idea of then it would move into the different departments or into different grade levels, that there would then be, during department meetings, during team meetings, turnkey work that was happening around that. And so the audits were asking us to consider to what extent do we need to just do like a district-wide, everybody is mandated to take this. So that is a consideration. The next is around the idea of culturally responsive curriculum. So enhancing vertical and horizontal collaboration, integration of cultural competencies, taking a look at curriculum and instruction materials. So, to reduce that out of jargony language, really thinking about our curriculum and spending more energy thinking about curriculum and assessment and the design work there to elevate more of the culturally responsive work within the work that's happening in curriculum. The third is the culturally responsive sustaining education framework. So thinking about the CRSF as the North Star itself, so that there's this one document. So we've been working with different resources. Learning for Justice, for example, has been helpful in terms of anchoring the outcomes for exploring equity. Culturally responsive sustaining education framework is directly out of New York State. So one thing that came through as a theme is really leveraging the culturally responsive sustaining education framework as they've actually called it the North Star, if you will, of all of the work related to cultural competence, and going back to that as the shared language. The next area that came through as a theme was around support for our English language learners and ENL students. So one bullet point there was around enhancing our policies around ENL and accessibility. So thinking about professional learning around academic and social needs, thinking about refining and enhancing our policy around that, ensuring that it's comprehensive, recruitment around multilingual staff, and really elevating the work we're doing in terms of supporting English language learners. The next theme was around use of data, feedback, and communications mechanisms. And so one thing that we have considered in the past, but it's back on the radar again for consideration, is an anonymous reporting system, thinking about a hotline system, a student behavior data review, that there's a committee that is regularly reviewing student behavior. And I do want to compliment our assistant principals, the work that we've been doing around the Dignity Act and the connection between eSchool data and being able to better track not just potential DASA violations, but also local incidents that are happening. We've now refined a lot of that in terms of our record keeping digitally. So it makes all the sense in the world that there's this other recommendation here around reviewing student behavior and having a group to do that. Assessing engagement levels, digital DASA reporting, so thinking about making the form digital. So we have it available digitally, but it's not a digitally populated form, so that was a recommendation that came through our IWG. Leveraging existing data and tools, so thinking about Panorama, we have that, and really starting to create those intersections around cultural competence work through the Panorama data. And then celebration of diversity, using technology to potentially capture and share and house public celebrations of learning and the diversity events that we do, which are many and varied, but thinking about it as a chronicle of celebration of what we're doing. And then finally, inclusive practices and school culture. So this idea of an equity audit came through the IWG, and this is a good start here, having had the opportunity to have independent eyes on us has been very helpful. Community engagement, potentially some presentations to the community, student engagement and perspective taking, like Socratic seminar, debate, project-based learning around really leveraging to unpack held beliefs and thinking about exploring and making sense of new beliefs. And then finally, the inclusion of support staff. How do we elevate participation of our support staff in the work? So their structure to their day is quite different than a teacher's schedule, for example. So how can we potentially get creative to make the opportunities for support staff more robust? So while we have that on professional development opportunities on SUPS conference day, might there be some other ways to elevate that? So these were the big themes that came through. We have done a lot of work in the area of cultural competence over lots of years, and this is really quite nice because now it's triangulating, and IWG is internal yet external, right? So we work with them as a core partner. Tri-State is truly external thought partners coming in, fresh eyes, interviewing lots of people, looking at lots of documents, spending time on our history, seeing lessons in action and getting a snapshot in the few days that they're here around some potential recommendations. And then Cherry Baker spoke with a lot of people after looking at lots of documentation. So having these three different sets of eyes and being able to see some themes that have come through to guide us in thinking through what might our next level of work be has been incredibly helpful. So I would like to recognize and thank all 3 of those organizations. And then our next step will be to work with our leadership team and Dr. Janice Mateo Toledo as Diversity and Inclusion Coordinator as the next pass at, let's take a look at all of this together and then outline some of our best next steps. Whom else needs to be brought into the conversation? What are some priority areas of focus and why? And then as far as Cherry Baker goes, they have given some recommendation, and we have been obligated to provide a management response. So there are certain things that come from those external audits that we must act on, and some of that is compliance related, and so we have to move forward with some of those things, and they are available to you as well. All right. Any questions, thoughts?
When I hear all these potentially impactful recommendations, I think to myself, who is going to do all of this? And then I think, we do need an administrator, because this is a lot of really important, these are a lot of important recommendations. And I don't think we can do this by, it seems overwhelming that we might pull this apart as a district and give some responsibilities to someone and some to another. And I think, and what the external audit, the DEI and ENL program audit, says that there needs to be alignment, right? And what's the word? When one person sort of takes charge of it, and I know you do, but you do so much. I mean, I'm always telling you have like 5,000 job duties. It makes so much sense to me when we go through this list that we need a dedicated person to take care of this and do it, right? Like put these things into place. When I opened the internal audit of the DEI and ENL programs, the summary of finding, ranks the deficiencies and opportunities for improvement and puts colors on them, which is, visually draws your attention to the things that are high need areas. And I feel like we're hearing from multiple sources that the reclassification of the coordinator role to an administrator needs to happen. So, right?
Well, I'm going to take the other side of that, actually. Yeah, Catherine, you want to come?
Is it okay if I speak? I can't see everyone. I don't want to cut anyone off.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a little low.
First and foremost, I'm thrilled that we have all of this data, both qualitative and quantitative, to look at, to really think about DEI work in our district, and I think it's wonderful. I would also like to call everyone's attention to the professional standards for education leaders. They're called the PSEL standards, and they guide leadership work across the nation. And it's something that all of our leaders in our districts must attend to. And in those core standards are things like vision setting and curriculum, but it's also cultural competency. So as we hear this conversation, to me, so much of this work rests in our principals and assistants. Like, I want to see this work be a part and parcel of action. It comes from the superintendent down. Like, this is part of our portrait of a learner, right? You want all kids to feel safe and included in our school. So I think our superintendent, our board, like, we all have to be held. Our principals have to be held accountable because this is part of their vision for their schools, and our teachers need to be held accountable for this, because these are like the professional obligations of the field. So one of the first things I would say is we really need to like take account and talk to our school leaders, especially since we are lucky to have all these leaders from New York City. Many have done a lot more work and training around implicit bias, around using data, around using equity audits. I want to know what they have in their bringing to our school communities and what kind of work they want to do across our schools. And I have real hope that especially our new kids going to high school and the middle school can bring that work to us, because it's been happening in New York City for the past 10 years. And in fact, Hastings kind of needs to catch up. So I'm hopeful to that. I would also say, like, when you see change, it's also because it's linked to accountability. And in our diversity meetings that we've had in the district, we talked about baking into the Danielson framework, which we use to evaluate teachers, and whatever we use to evaluate administrators as well, including district staff, a real emphasis on making sure all students are included. It starts with looking at data to make sure we don't have any tremendous gaps, but also looking at the panoramic to see who feels included and excluded from our school community. So I think those are really important first steps. In looking across districts in Long Island and Westchester, it's not always, I know they recommended this, the coordinator that does it. My concern is that that's like an adjacent role when I really think this should be baked into the work from top down, bottom up, and teachers and principals should be held accountable to making really safe and inclusive.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, it's a little hard to hear, but you said exactly what I was going to say. You said it better than I was going to say it. But to me, and I agree with Catherine, you know, what we're really talking about is the culture of the school, learning environment of the school, the district as a whole. And I agree with her that on these 2 points, one that she said explicitly, which is that especially with an entire, essentially, turnover in the administrative structure of these 3 buildings, these are the people, to me, that we need to charge as part of their key roles. And as she points out in even the assessment of teachers in the school, that this is the culture that we want to distribute through these buildings. And these are the people who are in the best place to do it. The other side of what she's saying, I don't personally feel that putting one role in charge is a great idea. This came up a couple of years ago. I was uncomfortable with sort of siloing it, because I feel like when something becomes somebody's responsibility, then it becomes not everybody's responsibility in a certain way. And to Catherine's point, I think it needs to be more just in the fabric of the schools, especially because they're so different. The learning environment at Hillside, we've talked about it before, it is like a hothouse. You can design things very deliberately because you control the day end to end. And the students are much more dependent upon the adult structure there. Middle school, obviously very different, especially because we have a 5th grade that works one way and the 6th that works differently than 7th and 8th. High school, also very different. You have electives, you know, students' pathway curricularly and the space they have in middle school is much more uniform, and we control much more of it. Once they get into high school, it's completely different. The kids have vastly different experiences of the same high school. So for all those reasons, and including what Catherine mentioned, I feel like, you know, the next step, absolutely correct. Understanding not just what's been proposed, but what are those 80% problems that we can solve? You know, what is the low-hanging fruit? What's the most durable? What doesn't depend on a person or a role? What's survivable? You know, what becomes part of the fabric of the schools themselves? Because we're a small district. We don't have endless funds. We need force multipliers. We need something that changes the schools and just becomes what the school is going forward. So for those reasons, I think the next step is absolutely correct. But joining Catherine, I would really like to see what we feel as a board and a district we could accomplish working with the principals and APs and auxiliary staff as well, to put something together. That's my view.
And I really appreciate all of the comments, and I will add one more thing, which is in this memo, what we didn't present were the many pages of accolades on the great work that's been happening. And I think to be able to build on those successes is also really helpful. To see, here were some of these really good bright spots. How can we then grab these and then move forward with the data analysis, with the curricular integration? If it's happening here really well, how can we grow it over here, right? So what's working in one place? How can we use this as a springboard? So I do think, you know, many voices and thoughts around that will be important. And so the intention is to bring this to the leadership retreat this summer for our next steps.
My thinking in following the recommendations of reclassifying the coordinator role is not to excuse the building leaders from doing this work. I totally agree that it is, they are the ones who hold the keys to the school culture. But I feel like we've been doing that, expecting them to create culturally competent school cultures. You don't agree, Catherine?
I would say that we've had a lot of change in leadership, and I want to hear what I'd love to see happen. Is I'd love to see all the data brought to the table from the panoramic, from the state test, from the stars, disaggregated by gender, by race, by English language leadership status, by disability status, to really get a sense of that, the terrain and the landscape. I'd also love to see an equity audit looking at the curriculum, seeing what's going on. I'd like to audit the board even, like what type of questions we're asking, who we're asking about. I mean, I think that kind of data all pulled together and then saying, hey, let's look, like, who's missing, who's not succeeding. I think that's something that really has to come from the top down, from administration, and then it has to be part and parcel of our culture of our school. I don't know if it can be sort of a side branch. I also feel like it needs to be baked into the Danielson framework to some extent. We don't see the change unless there is some assessment piece. So within those check boxes for the framework that we're looking at, the culture of the classroom, whose voices are heard, who's silenced, when there's activities or inappropriate behavior in the classroom, how is that being addressed? Like, that's the culture that we really need to dig into here, and I think that's our school leaders that assess that, and it's their job to do that. So that's where I really see it. That's why I see it so much in the position. We have new leaders, so I'm always supportive.
Yeah, and I would also say, to your point a little bit, like, what at the end of the day, what we're really talking about is what we want every child to, when they're in this school, feel like they have a pathway to succeed on their own terms. We want children to feel that every day, and we want them to succeed. And so, to Catherine's point, and I agree, to me, it is, I don't see this, I don't see an administrative role as being some sort of like, final solution to things that it just solves all the problems. I really feel like it's the people who children spend the most time with. To her point about Danielson's framework, it is the teachers. It's their day-to-day, the quotidian stuff that, keeps them on a path to success. That notices when they've fallen off of that. It notices when they no longer feel that way. And so to me, those are the people that I logically feel like we most entrust with is sort of the keepers of that flame, So that's,
I agree. I agree. But the teachers need to be able to go to someone who is an expert in this, in creating a culturally competent community. And I don't see the coordinator to administrator switch as a final solution, but as the beginning of a deeper analysis and implementation of a culture. If Catherine's saying it needs to come from the top down, part of the top would be this person.
I mean, listen, it's obviously something we're going to talk about as a board and as a community, but I think it's a valid discussion to see what's going to be most successful on the terms that we can manage.
Right, and it's not up to us. We're having the conversation. That is, there's many stakeholders in this conversation, but something that also the implementation of the hotline reporting system, an anonymous hotline reporting system that all the other river towns have. I don't understand why we're not moving on that. That seems like a low-hanging fruit.
I'm not sure they all do. I've lived anonymous systems in my 2 previous stops, and you have to make sure it's 100% covered. Because some of the anonymous things that may show up there could be life or death. I'm just being direct. And if it's not 100% covered, we then are into a very, very problematic spot. So I think the anonymous is an interesting idea. We're going to dig into it. That came through the audit. We said in the audit, and actually I'm glad Melissa said what she did underscoring that audit, and there's a link directly to it at the end of the public document, because that's those management responses are required. You remember, those actually put date certain. So there's a date certain on this exact question of the administrator. There's a date certain on the anonymous. So we'll come back to it, we'll look at it. But I can tell you the pivotal issue is once you put an anonymous opportunity up, if you're not staffing it, you got an issue. So we're not saying no, but again, that management document was quite explicit, quite specific as to the recommendation and a date certain to respond. So I think in general right now, this discussion is very healthy. Where I see it pointed is, as then Melissa's working back with the team on all of these 3 reports, what's what, beginning to sort it through, and we'll be giving feedback regularly to you as a board. I would say the administration one will for sure come to a head mid-fall when we begin talking about the budget. And the number of administrators that you feel we have a carrying capacity for. So that'll be definitely a time. But again, there's a specific timeline for a number of these recommendations, particularly that's the value of the audit.
Yeah, I think something we're all in agreement, I mean, so far, all in agreement of, I do think some level of our own internal, re-audit of this, or like Catherine's suggesting, because, when we met with Cherry Baker to look over these findings online, one of the things that came across is that, it is a outside organization. They're in North Carolina. A lot of this stuff happened remotely. Chicago, sorry. The feeling was this report, it's valid, but it could have been for like a small college or something. We had a discussion about it. It's a little bit of a disconnect. Sort of, we said to them at some point, we're a small school district. I had asked them at one point. I said, it's a long list of recommendations, but we sort of reset. I said, at core here, this is something that this district, to your point, where they have sort of the accolades, we're trying to do. A lot of districts don't even bother with any of this. So I asked them, I said, when you make these recommendations, you have to understand the effect. Like some of these things are hard for us to meet because we're a small school district. We're not like a college or university. And they said, oh yeah, we're really more just assessing, trying to identify areas for growth, things like that. And at one point I had said, I felt like some of these things that you listed are almost telling us what the solutions are, irrespective of our capacity to fulfill those, which is some of the things that Dr. McCursey's raising. And they took that as valid criticisms, which is all to say that I think their viewpoint, their external viewpoint, their educated viewpoint from what the other things they've seen is very important and valid. But I do think our own next step is to kind of look at where we are, on our actual level that we exist on, and what we can work with and make up our own decisions. So, and I think that we'd all be in favor of that. So, is that kind of the plan? Or?
Yes, that is the plan. And one of the key pieces, too, will be unpacking potential unintended consequences. So, for example, it is very hard on paper to disagree with this idea of an anonymous reporting system. It seems like a no-brainer, right? And then in reality, I can tell you quite honestly, as someone who personally at one point in my professional life received 15 anonymous things to investigate, which I was deeply committed to doing earnestly, didn't have enough information to investigate them and couldn't go back to anybody to be able to ask the right questions, to be able to take action, and I'm left with this unsettled feeling of potentially verified things that I can't even look at. So there are pros and cons with these, and I think, to your point, we'll get together as a leadership team and we'll really think through these things around what is actionable, which of these things do we think would be most helpful, and then if we agree that this looks like a great first next step, what are the potential unintended consequences once we move forward with this? What kind of domino effect will that have specific to Hastings, which is different than it could be in a small college, for example? So, yeah.
I would agree with that. And I mean, when I see this list, it's kind of like, if you read it as a list, it seems like daunting, right? But a lot of these are kind of different aspects of a theme that doesn't it's not necessarily a solution. It's talk amongst yourselves and put the priorities on the table, right? The red items, to your point on the audit, those are kind of non-negotiable, immediate, but it should be a continuum, right? Short, medium, long-term. In the scheme of what we do well, I think we could learn a lot from what we do well and let that govern, and that change, kind of implementing some of that could compound itself and really lead to more, but this seems like a daunting task if it's a list, but it's really not a list. It's sort of like put it in our context over a continuum of time and consolidate. I kind of like that idea because it feels like it has 1,000 little branches, right? Like, what are the overarching goals and how do we kind of govern towards that in subgroups and that kind of stuff? So I would agree with what everyone has said.
Speaking to what Maureen just said, I actually don't think it's so overwhelming. I think it's the good work that we need to do at schools, and I think we're doing some of it, but I think if we especially use data to lead us, we can get there, and it's the work we're supposed to be doing. I'm also hopeful, as I train school leaders, for the past 10 years, we've been training them around these P-cell standards, so they've been learning this as well, so I'm hopeful that a lot of our new leaders are better prepared to engage in these conversations and ask these questions than perhaps we've seen, which I think is important to note. At the same time, we've been having this conversation in Hastings for a while. I know the idea of an equity audit has been thrown around for the past 3 or 4 years, and we haven't seen it done. So I guess my question with this is, we have all this idea. We know a path forward. What's going to be our timeline? How are we going to measure our success as a board to see the system shift in some way? So I guess my question is, like, are we going to have a strategic plan around this? Are we going to have a timeline? Like, what are some concrete next steps so we can make sure the district's moving?
I would suggest, and Melissa will be on point with this, but I think if we take advantage of the external audit framework, that because we already had to list recommendations, list some preliminary responses, and put a timeline to it. And given this good memo that Melissa worked on that you have before you hitting the themes, we can layer in the additional pieces from Tri-State, the additional pieces from IWG, and where I have to expand that framework. But that gives us who's responsible, what the initial sense is in the deadline, and we keep the board apprised of that. And then Melissa can come up with sort of what's the overall deadline, right? Because we have 14 deadlines in there, if you get my point. But then what's the overall deadline? And we can keep the board up to speed. To reiterate what Melissa said, the next step, though, is to go back inside, so to speak, because of the timing of all this. And I advise the board that you're getting this before a lot of the staff administrators have seen it. And in my MO, modus operandi, I always work from the inside out, and the board is sort of quasi-inside out, if you get my sequencing. So we want to get a chance to go back inside efficiently with the leadership team to sort of sort out some things with Janice, who's the very active coordinator at this point, and then begin to work with our other partners on what does this all mean, and pull together a distilled plan. Which is largely structured around the way that we gave the feedback to the external audit, if that gives a helpful sense of things.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me end on a positive on this. And I want to reiterate something that Melissa said. We have immense work to do here. We have a mountain to climb here. But how many visitors do we have from Tri-State?
Probably around 18, I want to
18,
say.
representing probably 17 school districts. And they said, for all of your struggles, Hastings, thank goodness for calling the question in this day and age, and thank goodness for creating a space that for 3 days we could safely talk about this. Let's just look at UVA, the former dean of the Harvard Ed School, and what's going on down there. There are very few safe places right now to talk about these issues. We are talking about them. We're going to talk about them publicly. So can we end on that compliment? Dignity and respect, that's where we're going to be. Human dignity and respect. We're going to be there. Yeah. And I'd urge all of us as we work through this to set aside some small differences, understanding the larger whole is what we're working on. So let's please keep our eye on that.
Well said.
Thank you, Bill.
Yes, thank you, Bill. Thank you. If it's okay, any other questions, comments? I'm going to move on.
I unfortunately have to go. I'm sorry.
Oh, both of you guys have to go.
I do.
We still have quorum, though.
Yeah, we still got to make sure we get some
2:30.
votes done. Do you
Why don't you move?
why don't you do the votes,
Okay,
and then we
so
can come
under-
back. And does that make sense, Maria?
Okay.
Yeah, get the votes done.
All right, so if that's okay, we're going to jump down to business items in number 6. Just to note that one of the business items is officially accepting the results of the bond vote. So if anybody wants a moment to look around things, but is there a motion to approve business items, just count them up, 1 through 19? Are there any questions or comments regarding business items 1 through 19? Is there a motion to approve business items 1 through 19?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Moving on to placement services for CPSC and CSE. Are there any questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve our placement services for CPSC and CSE?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Moving on to personnel as a consent agenda. Are there any questions or comments regarding our appointments, amendments, or resignations? Is there a motion to approve our personnel via consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Last vote, just on the minutes. This would have been from the June 17th meeting. Are there any questions or comments regarding the minutes? Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the June 17th meeting? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
I'm not going to vote, I wasn't here.
Oh, that's fine.
I'm abstaining.
So she's abstaining because she wasn't here. All in favor? Thank you very much. Okay, so the voting's done. So if you guys want to...
And let me just, you've just voted on without question, but I hope you understand, you've given me authority to do some hiring between now and October. That's pure logistics and practicality. You don't meet again till late August, and we still are doing hiring, and we've learned the hard way, if you don't give the superintendent that authority, we lose good people. And so I appreciate it's worked well. You then can revisit. At the end of the day, if you don't like something, hold me accountable. But that flexibility really makes a difference, so
Yeah,
thank you.
it's been in place since he arrived, so we've been doing it. So thank you. Feel free.
Good
Sorry,
luck
it's so
with the
chaotic here.
hiring.
Apology about this.
Public comment?
Apology about this.
Yes, we have public here, so we'll move up. So can we move up public comment to... Okay.
I'm just gonna, I would like to stay for public comment.
I hear public comment.
You did?
And we don't want, and then Maureen's got a critical update on the capital bond work.
Okay.
That's also posted, but, yeah.
We could always do that.
Okay. All right, Jody, thank you.
Thank you, Jody. Thanks.
So, I got the luck.
Lara, yeah.
Oh my God, I am so cold. My
I know,
feet
it's
aren't
freezing in
working
here,
anymore.
sorry. The mic should work, I think it's on.
Hello, hello.
Yeah.
That would be so nice. Thank you. Oh my God, I'm shivering. Yeah, so I am Lara, not Lara, Weitzman, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I just wanted to make some comments for your consideration on a couple of items you spoke about today. One of them is about the distraction-free schools policy. I am not a person who loves technology. I'm glad that the world is starting to experiment with different ways of trying to help the next generation be less dependent, addicted, distracted, all of those things. And I also know that technology has created a mental health crisis for our teenagers, and living with one in my house and speaking with her and her friends. And I have not discussed this with them at all, but I'm also concerned about the mental health impact of suddenly pulling the plug, because they are so dependent on being in constant communication with one another and with us. And so I would just ask, if you haven't, that you think about, or the building leaders think about, what's that transition plan around the social emotional piece for the kids. And I know that, some of the building leaders sometime down the road in the future are hoping to have advisories and things like that, where there's more peer and with adult communication and support, but we're not there yet. So I'm wondering what's going to happen. The other thing was about the whole issue of organizational change around the DEI work and having the administrative level position. And I think most of you probably know that I do organizational change work, and a lot of it is around DEI. And what I would just say is there's a polarity to be managed. I don't believe, based on my experience, that the right thing to do is to have one or to not have one. I think it really depends on the context. Alex, you said if it's not one person, it's everyone, or if it's not everyone, it's one person. The truth is, both of those things are true. If it's not one person's responsibility, if it's everyone's responsibility, generally nothing ever changes. And I can say that with total clarity. And with DEI, it does so often get polarized into like that's a side project that person does. Whichever path you choose, somebody has to be a driver for making sure that it's getting done and that there's accountability. 45 things, that is frigging nothing in my field. You can organize that into a strategic plan and an implementation plan if you have good guidance. Easy peasy. The implementation and actually making change stick, that's the hard part. But this is not that much to do, really. And I would also just say that in my experience, a small organization is way easier to change than a big organization. So I actually think that works in our favor here in Hastings, and the fact that we all know so much about our schools. I think internal politics will probably be the bigger challenge. And the last thing that I want to say is, just related to what I was just saying about a plan, I would encourage you in your retreat, if you have time, to think about theories of change and think about who are we actually in this district, what are the human resources that we have, what are the time resources we have, how are we structured, and based on that, what theory of change will hold us most accountable and will enable us to do this without breaking, right? So my one last thing that I said I was going to say is my biggest concern about not having somebody in an administrative position is that the leadership and the followership, but mostly the leadership of the schools and of the districts is almost entirely white people. And I think that is incredibly dangerous, incredibly ineffective, and really does not send the right message. And you also don't want to quarantine one person of color to lead all the change. It's really a quandary. But I think it's a quandary that you all, and with whatever community support you want to use, need to grapple with in figuring out how to make this next stage the most effective.
Thank you. Hello.
Hey, everybody. And I'm going to read for that was excellent. I'm not very good at public speaking. So
Okay.
Read. You all already have this in your inbox. So I'm going to bore you once again with my little issue. It all hinges on what I believe your lawyer's definition of things are and what the state...
I would recommend we not in the public place go into
Yeah.
legal discussions.
Okay, I'll keep it brief.
Just
That's in fairness to you as much as anyone else. We can't get into sort of legal discussions in a...
Can I just make one preface here? If this is an issue, there was an email that we had received. If this is an issue where the board might be called upon to adjudicate, I'd be very cautious about laying out anything, because we're supposed to have sort of a clean, hygienically away from whatever issues going on. So
you don't want to hear about it?
I don't know what you're going to say. I'm just saying.
I'm going to reiterate what I said in the email in more clear terms.
Let me be fair to the process, because this could make a difference to you.
But I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, and normally in public comment, I won't respond, but I think it's useful and helpful to occasionally break the rule to keep rules correct. When one is frustrated with a decision as it relates to a particular student, one works the ladder with complaints, and it's in policy, and we honor that greatly. So there are layers to that and processes to that. The ultimate arbiter on most of these complaints is the board. So once they've heard about something too early, they are no longer able to be that arbiter. If the superintendent hears about it at the wrong time, he or she's no longer able to be the arbiter. So it's critical that kind of processes that may relate to a family or a particular set of students, that process is worked in the privacy of that process, as opposed to in a public space. Because once it's in the public space, for whomever or whatever, it's undermining the potential for whatever that complaint might be.
But you understand, because you're also CC'd, that this issue now has made its way to Assistant Superintendent.
Can I just in
So the next step is the state and the court. I'm sure you don't want them to be the arbiters, so I was going to bring it up once more time to see if anybody cared to hear it.
The core issue, so in a public board meeting, a couple ground rules that we always observe. Number one, we don't discuss individual people in the school, including students, is not the right forum for that.
This involves any number of students.
If you have general comments,
I do.
Or you can generalize them.
I have.
Okay, and fit them within 3 minutes, then we can restart the
It's too late for that.
No, that's fine. No, I'm not counting. I'm just saying.
Aaron,
I know everybody's freezing.
No, we're not freezing. We're trying to be helpful here. I'm going to be a little blunt. We've
Please.
seen your email. It's in process.
Yeah.
I think if you do anything that may affect the reading of that legitimate set of complaints you're bringing to be heard, I don't want you to undermine yourself. I think you have to give yourself the opportunity for the process to work through.
It sounded to me like the process had been worked through and the decision was final. So I was going to bring it up here as a matter of literally checking the boxes on my end so that when I take things to the next level, I could say I checked all the boxes.
So
but I defer to your wisdom.
You've been fair warned. So proceed as you may.
No, I don't want to ruin my chances, obviously, of being heard fairly. So,
first of all,
I defer to your wisdom. I mean, if you say I shouldn't bring it up, you know what it is. So,
yeah, I would recommend that you let the channels work out, and if at a later meeting it's come to some conclusion, and then that would be the time. Let the channels work.
I can wait till the August 27th meeting if you prefer. But again, the email I received this morning indicated that it had been worked out. So if there are discussions, I need to be privy to that fact.
Well, we were not on whatever transpired, so I would say that we are the final stop for most things within the district. That stop, whatever, I don't even know what's going on exactly, but that hasn't reached us yet. Okay. So whatever private issue...
Don't open your inbox, because you're on it, but don't open...
I haven't been there yet. But there is an additional step, it sounds like. So if you have general comments to make that are depersonalized, that's perfectly legitimate, you know. I would just say that...
Again, I need you as my wingman here, so if you're saying...
Make it general.
But he's saying don't even bring it up, so it's fine. I don't need to bring it up. If it's in process, it's in process.
I wouldn't bring up specifics. If you have some more general comments...
I just generally was going to point out the laws that are applicable and that I think that the district is in error of them, but if we're not worried about that and we all feel good about where things are going, then that's fine. You see what I'm saying, right? Like,
I don't want to comment because we're
well, now they really want to know.
I'm sorry.
I would say, just from as a parent and the trustee also, I would say that it sounds like there's an additional stop on your issue, then we might be able to legitimately handle it.
Okay.
Keeping it hygienic might be the best. And if you can always write to us.
I wasn't going to say anything mean.
I'm saying just, the way, the laws of the land here.
That's fine. I appreciate the guidance.
Okay.
All right. Were you going to say something, or you?
We do have a second public comment, so
that's a no.
If it involves, you come back. Okay.
Fair enough.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye, Teresa. See you.
See you.
Sorry to leave.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm Megan Stana. I usually write this down, and this is the first time I'm not, so kind of bear with me a little bit. I kind of like when our things happen after the first comment, because it gives me all that time to figure it out for the second comment. I just want to say that I'm really proud to be part of a district who takes DEI so seriously, especially in the current climate. I think it'd be really easy for the board and for the administrators to say, this doesn't seem like it's a great idea when you look at politics and what's happening in the White House, so we're just not going to touch it. I'm really glad that everyone is brave and honest enough to say that dignity should be the center of all of our policies and all of our decisions. I'm also really grateful that you, as administrators, are willing to share all of the data that's been coming back. I think it also would have been really easy to say that, oh, it's going to be the next meeting, the next meeting. I really appreciate the timeliness in which you've made all of that public. I think that's great. Listening to the comments about how to proceed, I really hope that you take a two-pronged approach to this, baking it into learning, and then also looking at it as an administrator being added to the mix. Baking it in, I think we've already really gone really far with that. I think there's definitely more to do. I'm excited about the Center Lane curriculum, the idea that that could be expanded into more grades, but then also into different types of dignity. Those laws don't just apply to LGBTQ people, they apply to everybody. So being able to widen that funnel to include more people would be a really great way to capitalize on something that we know is already really working. I hope that by baking it in, we have teachers that are comfortable in their own professional settings to be able to call students to task when they hear slurs or when they hear malicious comments, whether it's dignity related or not, to be able to call those students to task in a way that they feel both educated and confident to do. I'm sure you've all heard the anecdotal stories about teachers who just happened to not hear even though they were in the room. I hope that as we do more professional development, teachers will be mandated to take it and that they will be able to they'll be able to handle those situations the best way possible. As far as the administrator goes, I myself have written 2 letters over the years, and I don't think we need to rehash why I think that an administrator role is really important. But all of what had been said earlier was said much more eloquently than I about having somebody in charge as opposed to everybody being in charge. I understand that there's going to be budget issues, especially since an administrator has just been added to the roles. The idea of adding another administrator, I imagine, is daunting from a budget point of view. But and I don't have a solution. I just want to reiterate how important that I really think it is to have somebody who holds the ball and is the person to go to, who has administrative responsibilities and opportunities to not just suggest change and suggest policy, but to be able to enforce policy and to be able to mandate change. And I guess that's it. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Oh, thank you. Thank you all very much, and for being patient and waiting for us. Moving on, we're going to re-enter the presentation lane here with an update. This is a schedule-based update on capital bond progress. Thank you.
Okay, yes. So as you know, today you actually adopted the results of the election, the bond vote, and this is just really to provide a running document, which we'll be doing now probably each week. It may be smaller than this, but just to kind of keep us all updated on schedule and as things are moving along where we currently are. Again, it includes the actions that occurred today at the board meeting in terms of adopting both the official vote results as well as the language, which was prepared for the Board of Ed by our bond counsel to allow for bond financing. So once the bond was approved, that gives the district, when the time comes, the ability to borrow monies to do work, and including some of the professional services. One of the things we may have to consider that is currently in process is the finalization of our contracts with our architects and design architects and engineers, because the pre-bond work that they did covered a certain amount of the work, and then there's like a post-bond aspect of the work in terms of actually now bringing us through the end of the completion of the work to be done. So we are very, very close on both of those contracts. We may need possibly to have a meeting later before the end of August, because although you gave Bill the authority to hire, in the in-between, the contracts are something the board would have to come together to finalize. The other piece that we're currently also working on is to go out with a RFP for a construction manager service. This is the time, not so much as that they would be joining us in the next month or two, but there is a time come late fall, early winter, we're going to want to have one on site as part of this work. And again, there's some things in which we'll be submitting to the state. So as you see here, a lot of this, and I'm not going to talk through it, I think what we've done, similar to what we've done with the budget, is create presentations that can now be housed on our bond website to really just help us, because as we go through these meetings, we'll be talking and using some of these different timeframes, such as the schematic design versus the design development, just so it kind of helps everyone understand and keep track of what's happening when. So again, this is really something that Lan had laid out for us even prior to the bond being approved, just to kind of give us updates on the actual schedule of when things will occur. So as you can see, and it's broken down into 3 components, similar to the fact that the bond was in 3 components, because each of these may be slightly different based upon the amount of work that's required. So we did start, the first few slides are addressing the additions to the Farragut complex, and you can see that the schematic design phase is kind of began. I mean, the one thing, the pre-bond work already starts that work somewhat, right? They've done a lot of the programming work. So some of this, although because we have the architects we do with both Land and PPDW, they do so much pre-bond work where some firms operate a bit differently. So that being said, I feel as though some of the schematic work in terms of the addition, they did a lot of work pre-bond in terms of programming. There will still be a component of that will be occurring now as well. But where some firms really just don't even bring it as far as we've seen, and also being we had that the audit of space done, which preceded us even doing the bond, that really gave them a big advantage in terms of this part of the time frame and the schematic design. So again, that's going to be well underway. And then as we get into September, October, that's where the design development really comes together. And again, this is just part of the public record, so you can see what actually is occurring during that time frame in terms of coordination with all the different engineering that's required. And then you'll see where then in late, it brings it right up to the time in which they get into the construction documentation, which is really the part that occurs right prior to the permits then being sent into the state. So this is like the last stop. And throughout all of these, which is not included in here, the board will be receiving updates from our architects, not just myself and Bill. They will be coming to meetings to kind of present different findings too. So obviously, well before they hit construction documentation, as the design is fully fleshed out and you'll have those meetings. So if there are some tweaks or questions or anything, that those will be hashed out prior to the construction documents being fully finalized. So again, that you can see where the goal right now we do have as far as submitting to New York State, which is the really important timeline that we always kind of helps us understand when the work may be able to begin, the actual physical work. I think originally had talked about the end of December, but quite frankly, even if we got it in the day before we left break, the state is on vacation. They're not like, okay, we're working through Christmas. They're not working either. So I think realistically, even if we hit that mark, really they're not opening it up till like that January date.
So can I ask just to clarify?
Yeah, of course.
So October, December is when we'll be finalizing the construction document.
Yes.
So if we stick to timeline, when we roll out of December, things are locked down, final.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's important. I know none of us are really here for the last bond, but one of the, when I hear some of the gripes that people have about how that project went, Hillside, some of the things how I would have done this differently. So many of those things live now. It's like the real stuff's going to happen. Real, like eyes on details and being thoughtful about things and listening to the community. There's a real opportunity to make this much more successful and or not. There's a lot that it's a critical period. So I just want to underscore that. All we did was a lot of work passing the bond, but this is really where a lot of stuff's going to get decided, and we all have to pay close attention to it. So sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, and I just wanted to assure you that, although this is just kind of laying out a time, I think it's, to your point, that means there will be a lot of presentations here at the Board of Ed meeting, possibly some facilities, other meetings in between these with the facilities members of the board. But because we do have a developed bond, I think primarily it'll be being done here, and so that everyone can kind of, because as you said, there's so much in it, and sometimes when you have the committee structure, then it like prolongs things, and where there may be times it's more efficient to have the board meet as a whole with even if the meetings run a little bit later because of the work. That and the presentations on these topics, but that is really the time where the architects can then take the feedback they hear and then incorporate it into before they finalize those designs. So again, just assuming, and I think just so you know, they do build that in. They have an understanding that they'll need to make some adjustments, and that's reflected in this time frame. So again, the ultimate goal is that we're able to start the work in the fall of 2026. Now, at different times, if you go back over the times we were discussing the bond, and there are times we've made a few week adjustments here or there, a month. I think the one thing just to note here is there was some initial thinking about the hope, can we bid it to get the work to break ground in the summer of 26. I think if it works that way, great, but I think we also want to think about the bidding, right? The longer it takes us to get the approval, it's nice to have a short bid window, but then you don't get as much competition in the bids in terms of like financial competition. So I think even though there's always pros and cons to being able to break ground at different points, right now we've adjusted that, which was before the bond was voted on, to kind of think about it being more like fall 26 where the ground would be broken, because much of it, obviously it's more than 2 months of work anyway, so ultimately you can have construction throughout the school year, and it's coordinated and second shift and all the rest, and we're able to do anything we think is more impactful. We schedule it, like this as an example, if they had to do this is a lot less complicated than Hillside because they had a lot of rock to blast up there. So I think this is definitely a lot quieter and a lot less impactful. Most of the work is going to happen second shift, meaning once school is ended. If there is some initial work in the fall that may be a little bit loud, or we may want to consider, when that'll occur, weekends and such. But there's a reason that we wanted to be mindful, because getting good contractors on, not limiting ourselves, the bid is very important. And this is such a large project that you want to give it the needed time to get the right people here, and quite frankly, starting in the fall, especially we start, letting people know it's going to be going out to bid, because they'll be concluding a lot of their work, in the summer. So sometimes like contractors come fall, we get better bids is what I'm trying to convey. And even with Hillside, actually, we did well because we did start in kind of an unusual time to start the work, which actually we got a lot of bids because a lot of people weren't working, because most people do try to at least kick off the work in June and July, like historically. So you'll see that there is a slight modification, but the one thing, the beginning or the opening of the building should be around the same time frame. So like 2 months one way or the other, we just want to be mindful of, and again, these are things we'll be discussing depending upon, does it get into the state a little earlier? Do we get approval a little bit earlier? So these are subject to kind of be pushed back a couple months, or potentially pushed out a month or so, depending on that.
Okay.
And again, this is, I spoke a lot about the Hillside addition, the Farragut addition, but everything else here is the other two items, which are just the building upgrades. We anticipate those to be submitted to the state earlier because, again, they're a little bit more straightforward than adding an addition. And you can kind of see the timelines there that were laid out, because on these are just kind of one-page slides to set out the schedule there.
Okay.
And then the other one I know that people may have some questions on, again, are the fields. And you can see there that a bit different because, as you can imagine, I mean, there will be, again, to your point, Alex, a lot of time for the feedback, the development of the bids. The board will see what's included in there and all the rest. So there will be an absolute time frame. Like, again, it will be very important that, we have to understand that there's a certain time frame that all these things happen. But we anticipate, because doing a field conversion, especially where there is a field, right? We're not building a field that doesn't exist and some, correct. Yeah. So in terms of actually the design work of it is pretty simple. Not for me, but for engineers, this is a very, this is not a complex, this is much more straightforward than, say, the addition in terms of actually getting the documents, the design, and all the rest together. That'll happen relatively quickly. And as you can see, with the timelines, we anticipate having the field's done about a year prior to having the addition done, just based upon the actual work and the efforts it requires of the architects and engineers to get the designs completed and submitted to the state. And we also anticipate that would be a quicker approval at the state level because it's not as complex of a submittal. My goodness, sorry. I was at a wedding last night till 12:30 and it's showing. So again, that's just to kind of provide everyone, and we will keep this, I'll keep repeating it, we'll be having these up on our website, and if there's timeframes and these are adjusted, we'll make sure that those are kept, pretty current. We'll update them as we see needed. One of the things I just want to point out in the last one, we did talk throughout the process about working through a co-op process. That is still a bid. I just want to assure you, anything that's detailed in the bid has to be met by whomever. Going through a co-op just means that it is similar to how Ardsley secured their contract. It's just shortens the bidding window, and it makes it a little bit more streamlined to bring on a vendor. And that's all that refers to if anyone's asking what the co-op process means there. So that's why that kind of does help get the process flowing quicker. Okay. So that's about it on that. I don't know if you have any questions.
No real questions, and the trustees feel free to chime in. I just want to note, the community has definitely asked us somewhere along the way to have a couple of community meetings just to say, hey, this is what we're looking at. This is some of the details. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we don't have to do it today, obviously, but I think we will program in that time. Sure. Same type of presentations just to update people so they have a chance to be involved. Because again, that's a big part of the process. And for me, obviously the bond passed, but the real job I think is that at the end of the day, to end up with a project that is done well enough that even people who didn't vote for it, can support what actually ended up happening and feel good about it, because that's what we want. We don't want someone to win a vote. Sure, David.
Yeah, I would just agree with you. I think, just to commend you once again. I think that the job that the board done, Bill, in communicating the process and the steps of the bond over the course of the last few months made a really big impact on the district and the community's just visibility on the project and desire to get it passed. So I would encourage us to be as transparent as possible throughout the next couple of years as well. I really do think it's going to make a big difference, and I agree.
That's great. Thank you.
And you may even want to consider having some work sessions or something. But again, like you said, the board can kind of discuss how that will look. Sorry,
just a quick question on the fields finalizing. What's the drop dead to finalize the requirements involved? You know how we had the subgroup, and so when does that get finalized as a product?
Well, it will have to be finalized prior to being submitted to the state, because the state will want to know exactly what you're putting in. So although the bid occurs after state approval, that's where the specifications of the fields have to be finalized prior to the permitting.
So if the initial submission is at the latest November, is that full?
Oh, no, yeah, so the reason it says that that was a bit different. I think what they do is they do submit some paperwork to kind of alert them there will be a submission. But I'll say, based upon my conversations, the end of November would be a good time to have that. And I think, again, the work we did pre-bond this time was I think because we did for the building, the larger study, and then I think because the fields, there was a good amount of research done before. I think we already have, again, it's not to say that's the final, but I think we already know where we need to go and what we need to include. So I think that is helpful. So that's why I think although it will be late fall when we will have to finalize that, I think we already, and our partners who have been working with us have an understanding of what those specifications need to be. And we'll have a time in the early fall to really get it locked in and make sure everyone feels comfortable with what is being submitted to the state.
Okay, I mean, it sounds like, to your point, Maureen, it sounds like it's long enough. It's not September 1st. We have a bunch of meetings. We have time. That's just the field as well. So.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then there was also an update on the Farragut Wing.
Yeah, so other than, and it was initially, the plan was to get a slide together, but that just never occurred. Sorry. There will be, there's work occurring. Our plan, I think Bill had shared at one of the last board meetings of the year, we know that we're going to have, unfortunately, not get it back in there, for the start of school. But again, we are pushing, and we're optimistic that it will be in the early fall, where, every day I think everyone is committed to getting the building open as soon as possible. There's just really the scope of work was just so significant. And although we're going to end up with a very nice updated building that's code compliant because of those code compliant aspects of the work and submitting for permitting to the state and all the rest, we got a bit delayed. But I will say that we are still meeting every Tuesday. We have our group, we have our architects, engineers, our design professionals. We're in the final stages of securing primes for the other work, like the electrical work, the mechanical components of this job. We already had a subcontractor put in the fire suppression system. We had secured that early on because we had the design, so we already were able to engage with a partner there. So I think, again, as I mentioned, if there is a need to reconvene the board for potentially between now, just for say if there's a contract that needs to be awarded, there may be a potential of that. But all that being said, I think the work is proceeding, and we're still hoping we'll make that deadline now. I'm pretty comfortable, and we're still working with the insurance company. We're still working through that because, as you know, it's a complex claim. It really is, and we did have a very, I would say, very good meeting, very productive meeting last week with them.
Good.
And we're continuing to kind of work through, because again, as the board knows and we've spoken about at other meetings, if it was just purely damage and restoration, but because of the age of the building, there were these other code compliant issues that came into play because of the more than 50% of the floor space of that building was impacted, which then kind of triggers other things under New York State Education Department permitting, which had we not addressed it, we would not have been able to get a CEO. So it could have look great, but we would not have been able to reoccupy the space. So I think, it just is a very large job. I mean, as much as we had hoped, and I think everyone was optimistic to try to get in sooner. I mean, just now kind of looking at what we're talking about, we're still getting a lot done in a very quick time frame. So, but I still am feeling confident with the time frame we laid out at the end of the school year.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'll take that. Yeah.
Just, I guess logistically, is there, can you see any needs for us to have to approve various things outside of the normal schedule? Or you're pretty confident it'll fit in the normal schedule?
I mean, I think the one thing is we have some subs, and I think we're just trying to decide once we finalize the scope of work for the mechanical and all the rest, is it in our best interest to sign the contract directly with them as a school district, or we have a general contractor, but if the general contractor secures the contract, they usually have a percentage fee they apply to it. And depending on what happens with the insurance, I just don't want to potentially miss an opportunity to secure the contract at a lesser amount, especially if I wouldn't want the insurances to pay more if not necessary either. But we're just trying to work that out, if that's, if that's going to be part of them securing the contract, which would then require us to secure the contract, which would then maybe potentially, they will not start work without a contract.
Of course, right.
So I think, and that's the one piece in terms of the timing. It's been very difficult because, as I mentioned earlier with the bond update, all the people who do this work are busy, right? They've secured bids and contracts on schools just doing normal bond work. They probably have their summer work lined up in January or February. And we really didn't even have our construction documents. You cannot bid without a construction document to bid on. So although we reached out to contractors until they knew the work was definite, they were not going to wait around to kind of secure it. So the other piece we're contemplating is potentially doing some of the work in-house. So we're sorting through some of those things to meet all the codes and be the most cost-effective we can be.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you for the update. Any other questions, comments? No? Moving on, we're going to skip down stuff we already covered. We're going right down to new business, which is just the preliminary list of BOE meeting dates for the upcoming years. There are, 21, 22 meetings. So for those of us who are good planners, you can plug this into the calendars. If you note any days you won't be able to make it, then that's, just to have some sort of baseline understanding. We're keeping the same day, Tuesday. We're keeping the same, what's the new sort of early start time, 6 o'clock, and we'll adjust as needed. So just so that we have that there. Moving on. Oh, we have to vote on it? Yeah. Oh, I didn't even know that. Okay. Sorry, let everybody go. Catherine, are you still with us?
Yeah, Tuesday.
Okay.
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
I think the walkthrough this year is going to be particularly
Oh, it's gonna be
important
interesting, right.
because of the fact, you'll be able to see the Farragut, what's happening there. And then I believe even prior to us taking it back online, you'll have to do another walkthrough.
Oh.
Just as
That'd be
part of
interesting. That
the
will be
process.
interesting.
Yeah. Mhm.
So are there any questions or comments regarding the BOE meeting dates for the upcoming year? No? Is there a motion to approve the BOE meeting dates?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Moving second, public comment? Nope, good, we'll move on. This is agenda review. We don't have another meeting until the 26th, which would be, as Maureen raised, the time where we would do our walkthrough. But as she also mentioned, it's likely that we'll have to come together, once or twice for other purposes. We could do that ad hoc and not via scheduling.
I can be quick, Alex.
Sure.
Thanks to Melissa D's good thinking, we redesigned this plan so that you have at the top of each page what are the running standard items, but then the special items that you may have at a particular meeting, those are listed within. So, for example, on the 26th, you see the walkthrough, future steps, state of the district, BOE meeting topics. And at the very bottom, we might move it up to the top, is things to be added. So capital bond implementation updates,
Yes.
we got to add those, SPED advisory committee update, instruction technology update, cultural competence related to today's feature. So I've found this helpful for planning out what's what, and Melissa D's good thought is if you see what's special, if you will, in each meeting, that helps you understand you want to have it then or later. So, for example, we had moved a couple of things out of this meeting wisely, or else we'd be here till 7 o'clock tonight.
Yeah,
all right.
that's true. I'm going to open up the board retreat planning. We don't have to do that today.
Right, because
Nobody's here.
We probably should at least figure out a way to talk about it. Not today, though, I agree. I don't know if there are a couple of you who want to talk, how you want to do this. I'm also sensitive to lightening the load on you, sir.
No, but I think, so that's a topic we're able to talk about. That's not a legal meeting for us to discuss our own meeting.
Exactly.
Right. So I think that just this week, I'll find out when everybody's around. I'll put a thread together and we'll just talk. That's probably the most efficient way because nobody's here. So.
In a ways to think about. I know Jody had some ideas she had shared, so you can work that through.
Yeah.
Last year, Dr. Szymanski was your facilitator, joined by Will Kang for some legal reasons. If I know that Dr. Szymanski is willing to facilitate again if that worked well.
Thank you.
she's tough. You the other is to go outside, if you will, but that's up to you. You decide. And then there could be value of having a will hang in on a whole set of other kind of guiding pieces. But you think of the design. Main point is, I know Dr. Smansky's willing to
Thank you.
facilitate if that's what you'd like, and she's also tough if you say, sorry.
No,
Who's making the scones this year?
Yeah, well,
Scones.
Jody's idea was a guest appearance from Sylvia. Maybe that's
she mentioned that to me as well, so.
scones.
Yeah, scones. I was like, those scones.
Yeah, she made that, right? Yeah.
Oh, you want to get out of here?
No, it's all right. But we'll talk as a board this week and get something rolling for that and set up a date as well. So I'm going to open up for Board of Ed comments.
I just want to share how excited I am to be a member of the board and to thank everybody for welcoming me. It's been really great so far, and I'm looking forward to working with everybody for the next 3 years.
Thank you. My own comment was going to be to welcome Maureen back, and thank you for the sweets, by the way, and also David, to welcome you on board. Literally, and you saw today, it's like both feet into the frying pan, how much stuff goes on here, even in the summertime. And on that note also, so welcome. All that note, just to recognize how much work, when we're all on vacation, how much work the administrators have to do, how timely it is, and also how hard the buildings and maintenance crew have to work to, like, from the day we get out of here, how they're in here, you see what's going on upstairs, the refurbishing the floors and everything, how they're racing kind of to make, a date that's almost 2 months in the future. So kudos to them. It's a lot of work to keep these old buildings running and to keep the district running even when we're all away. So thank you all. I appreciate it, certainly. Anybody else? No? Is there a motion to adjourn our meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Second.